This is the best angle for the lighting, but I don't know if y'all can see the mess in the background. If you can, ignore it. Do I need to turn the heater off because it's annoying? I'll just freeze. It's okay. It is finally starting to be that time of the year. The weather is getting warmer bit by bit. I can finally take walks outside and I have the will to live again. I don't know, that one may have been a little bit too personal. I am in the mood to read literally anything and everything. So if you are the same, I'm gonna share my TBR for this spring with you and also some book recommendations for you guys. Now, for me personally, I count technically spring as starting at like end of March to like June 1st. Like as soon as it's June, to me it's summer, but I understand that like May still has that springy weather, and I know depending on where you live, like it may feel like summertime, but it's definitely still more like a springy month. I have a pretty ambitious TBR. I will say all of these books that I have on my TBR have me very, very excited, and I'm going to start with the 2 books that I got this month from Book of the Month, which is the kind sponsor of today's video. So thank you so much, Book of the Month, for sponsoring today's video. Book of the Month's mission is to help bring in the best new and emerging fiction for their readers. They vet through books each month and give a selection of choices for readers to select from. And they have definitely helped me find some new authors, some new reads. Literally just last month, I had a 4.75 star from Book of the Month, and I would not have picked that book up if it were not for them. Plus, they have the best price for new and release hardcover fiction. This month, you can get your first book for just $5 with the code DIAMOND, and you're gonna get a free hat. I don't know about y'all, but I love hats, and especially ones that represent me as a reader. So this is a great deal. And don't worry, when joining Book of the Month, if a month's selections just simply don't catch your eye, no big deal, you can just skip that month. And each book is covered by a reader's guarantee. If you purchase a book and don't like it, no worries, they will replace it for free in the next month's box. I actually have 2 books that are making it onto my spring TBR that I got from Book of the Month this month. The first one is Retreat. This is a scandalous story. It says a beautiful con artist insinuates herself into a wealthy socialite's life with deadly consequences. And that just sounds right up my alley. Short and sweet, great for a springtime read. And then I also have Passion Project. I mean, I just feel like simply this cover screams spring. Takes place in New York City. I feel like I'm gonna eat that up. Head on over to Book of the Month. I'm gonna have everything linked down below. Again, $5 for your first book with the code DIAMOND with the free hat. Do not miss out on it. Continuing on with the spring TBR, I definitely have some new releases in here, obviously, because if you guys know me and know my book taste, some of my favorite authors are coming out with books over the next few months, so obviously a lot of those are making it on the list. First off, we have Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. Abby Jimenez, I adore all of her books. Last year, Just for the Summer, was one of my 5-star reads. Abby Jimenez is just able to pack an emotional punch inside of a rom-com where she makes the banter witty, the characters are very likable, it's very emotional but never feels too heavy, but like you feel the emotions that are supposed to emanate from the book. She's able to somehow, in every single book that I've read so far, wrap all of that together flawlessly for me. So I'm very excited for this one. One of my favorite authors as well, Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. I'm sure as readers we have seen this literally everywhere. I know Emily Henry is an author that kind of gets shoved down everybody's throats, and it's like you either love it or hate it. I am somebody who loves it. Speaking of love, hi Charlie. Oh, are you gonna go sit in the corner? I personally love when Emily Henry writes about bookish people / writers. She's done that in 2 of her books, and I just love the connection and the conversations and the banter that comes out of those. It's Beach Read and Book Lovers are literally some of my favorite books of all time, but definitely some of my favorite books of hers. So I'm very excited to see what she does in this one. Next up, I have Conditions of Will. Now, Jessa Hastings, the only thing that I've ever read from Jessa Hastings is the Magnolia Park series, which is obviously what she is, I feel like, the most well known for. Something that I love about the Magnolia Park series, apart from Julian Hates, but we all know, I don't need to get into that. I find Jessa Hastings' writing very interesting. The way she's able to like poetically string a sentence together, and when you have a bestie that loves that series and that is quoting lines and always posting about lines for that book, so you have a constant reminder of the talent of Jessa Hastings' writing. I am very interested to see that writing in another book that is separated from Magnolia Park. I never really got into Never, the book. It never was a interesting premise to me, so I don't think I'll ever pick up that book, honestly. So I haven't got to read her writing outside of the Magnolia Park series, so I'm very interested to see what it's going to be like in this one. I feel like, I don't know, even the synopsis, honestly, was a little confusing to me in a similar way that when the Magnolia Parks, like I remember I read Magnolia Parks for the first time. I feel like not a lot of people were posting about it, so I was very confused when I picked it up because I was like, I don't even really understand like what this book is about. I feel like her synopsis for her books sometimes lack a little bit. I don't know, like I can't really understand. I honestly don't know what this book's about, but I'm just gonna go into it. And I've heard great things about it from people who have gotten art copies. Next up, I have Can't Get Enough by Kennedy Ryan. This is the next book, and I'm not sure what the series is called, but the first book is Before I Let Go, and I really enjoyed that when I read it last year, and that was like a second chance romance from like a marriage perspective. Not sure what the trope is of this one, but I really enjoyed Before I Let Go. It's very emotional. I've read the first 2 books in the Hoop series by Kennedy Ryan, and I read Before I Let Go, so I'm very interested in picking this one up to continue on with that because I think it's one of the friends that we're introduced to, like of our main character Before I Let Go. She has like 2 friends, I think, that are gonna get books, and this is one of them, so I'm very excited for them. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, this one made it onto my spring TBR because the cover caught my eye, and that is something about Rachel Lynn Solomon's books, is every single release she's had since I was in high school, the first being the X Talk, something about her covers really do scratch an itch in my brain. They just always catch my eye for some reason. And listen, I am not ashamed to admit, I am somebody who does judge a book by its cover. A book's cover will make me pick it up every single time. And this one is What Happens in Amsterdam, and it has a bunch of like tulips on the front. It's very cute. I don't even know what this book is about. Honestly, if I'm gonna be honest with you guys, sometimes when I do TBR videos, it's kind of hard because I am not somebody who really reads the synopsis. Like I try to if I've never heard of the book before, and maybe I've seen it just like scrolling through either like socials or Goodreads or something, and I see it and I'm like, oh, what's this book about? Because I've never heard about it. But I honestly kind of like to go in a little bit blind. Frederick Bachman has a new release coming out, which is My Friends. And from what I understand of this book is that there is like this famous painting. So I don't know if the story is being told from the perspective of the friends inside of the painting. I don't know. But all I do know is that I do trust Frederick Bachman with his writing, and I will just simply pick up a book. I don't even really need to know what it's about. We have the final, I think this is the final book in the Windy City series, which is Rewind It Back. And I am so sad to see this series come to an end because it's definitely one of my favorite sports romance series that have been out. I'm not a big sports romance person, I'm gonna be honest, because I feel like sports romances, they talk about the sport that's going on, but then they kind of don't. Very weird in my head. And I know like the whole entire point of it being a sports romance is like you have this like athlete, and like that's a big part of his life, is like that's a job. I don't know, that's like my least interesting part of these books, but it's kind of fun that that's their career. But with this one, I feel like we've been waiting on this character for a really long time. He's popped up literally since the very first book, so it's going to be very interesting to see that story wrap up and also see all of the characters kind of wrap up in that story. So very excited for that one. Then I have It's a Love Story by Annabelle Monaghan. Annabelle Monaghan was a home run for me last year. I read all 3 of her books and they all made it to my favorite books of 2024. Summer Romance by her was my favorite book of last year, so I'm very excited to see. She's kind of in the same realm of Emily Henry for me, and I don't love to compare 2 authors together because sometimes I feel like Emily Henry is such a big author that if there's a lot of comparison that I don't really want to make, you know, so it's kind of hard for me to say that. But what I mean by comparing it to Emily Henry, it's the way that I've always said that I feel like Emily Henry is marketed as like romance. There's so much more to her books than the romance. Like there's always a different plot going on and kind of like self-discovery and exploration within the characters, if that's just like simply about themselves, if it's about relationships with parents or friendships or relationships period, there's usually something going on that the character is trying to figure out along with the romance that we're all like giggling and swooning over. But I feel like they are also so much more than just simply a romance, and I feel the same way about Annabelle Monaghan's books. It usually, a lot of the times, I feel like 2 out of the 3 books that she's had so far have focused on motherhood and kind of like self-individuality along with being a mother, which I find such an interesting topic of discussion. So I'm very excited to see what we do with this one. I remember me and Sarah talking about the synopsis on the podcast, and we both honestly were pretty confused with the synopsis, so I'm still kind of in the dark with this one. But like I said, she's just one of my trusted authors where it's like an auto buy. I'm just gonna pick it up. Next up, I have a debut novel, which is The Bright Years. I remember reading the synopsis, maybe it was like the beginning of the year I read it on Goodreads, and I just have kind of had this in my head for a while. I know it follows like a family, and I think it's just following family dynamics. And again, when it comes to just like fiction books, I find kind of diving into family and friendships very interesting. I really like that, and different like complex relationships. So I love when a book tackles that type of thing. Next, I think this is kind of like horror thriller, which is The Staircase in the Woods. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. The reason that I really want to pick this up is because there's like a famous story, like scary story of the staircase in the woods, where it's this like picture, I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, where it's just this random staircase in the woods that leads to ultimately nowhere. And there's like a lot of people have made like a bunch of different scary stories of their take on the staircase in the woods. And I feel like that's kind of what this book is tackling, of like this friend group found the staircase in the woods, now it's years later and something happened to one of their friends. They're kind of diving into it. It gives me ultimate scary movie vibes. Like, this sounds like the plot of a scary movie that I would 100% watch. So this one definitely made it onto my TBR because I am always interested in little plots like these. Next up, Deep Cuts. This is purely because I have seen a few people talk about and rave about this book. I don't even know what this book is about. I definitely need to do a little bit more of a deep dive, because when I tell you I have zero clue, I have zero clue. I don't know if it's kind of like a normal people talking at night situation. I know some of you have recommended me this book in the comments. That's why I kind of feel like, is it kind of in relation to like a talking at night type of relationship deep dive thing, where it's definitely not a romance book, it's more like on the literary side of, you know, a non-perfect type of romance, I guess you want to say. I've seen people rave about it. I've gotten it recommended, like I just said in the comments. So when I see a few people recommend me a book after I've talked highly about a book that they kind of relate it to, it always goes onto my radar. The Love Haters by Catherine Center. I have really enjoyed a lot of Catherine Center's like newer books, The Bodyguard and the rom-commers. Really enjoy those. Those were like over 4-star books for me. And with this one, again, Catherine Center's just kind of one of those, like when a new release comes out, I feel like I'm going to pick it up. I feel like her books give a good like springy summer vibe. Her characters are always a little bit quirky. So if you're into that, I feel like you'd like to pick up her book. They're always a little bit more like emotional. It kind of feels like an Annabelle Monaghan book, but like a little bit more quirky and lighthearted. Then we have 32 Days in May. This is a book where our female main character has just escaped to the Jersey Shore, where she spent her childhood summers at, I'm pretty sure. And she just recently got a lupus diagnosis that she's trying to deal with. And somebody that she knows sets her up with their cousin, and they kind of have this like whirlwind romance for the month of May. This would definitely be a good book to read in May. I don't know, I am somebody that likes to match stuff up like that. I don't know why I'm very specific about things like that, but I just thought I like these types of books, especially when you're still in the springtime, but you're trying to, you know, ultimately, you know, we do jump from season to season prematurely all of the time. I feel like it's unfortunately something most people can't help, because you do just romanticize the next thing to look forward to in life. And I feel like sometimes it's fun to pick up reads like that while you're looking forward to the summertime, and I feel like this could be one of them. You Between the Lines. This is a book I've actually had on my Kindle for a little bit, and I actually watched a TikTok that came up on my For You page where somebody had recommended books that were giving Emily Henry vibes, like if you were searching for that. And in that video, the creator actually put Promise Me Sunshine, which is a book that I've recently read, and I really enjoyed that one. So I was like, okay, I trust that. So You Between the Lines is one that I'd actually seen that it was going to come out, and I really liked the synopsis. It's like they are rivals and they have the same poetry class, and he like can't stop writing poetry about her. Excuse me. 2 writers, poetry. It's going to be beautiful. I'm very much looking forward to that one. And then lastly, I have The Collected Regrets of Clover. This is one of the 25 books I wanted to read this year. And sometimes I find myself like every month looking at this list and be like, oh wow, you've knocked none of those off, you know, and it's not that big of a deal. Honestly, those lists are just fun to curate sometimes and kind of like see how many you can read. They're definitely books that I have on my radar, but it's definitely not something to like put pressure on, you know, and that's definitely something I've been navigating this year, reading goals and like TBR lists and stuff like that. Like, it's never that serious. It never is. So I've stopped kind of giving weight to things like this. But with that being said, this is one of those that are on there. Okay, so those are all of my books that I have on my radar for this spring. Again, will I get to all of these? No. Like, there's like a very, very, very low percentage of a chance. But these are all books that I've kind of seen, and they're definitely on my radar. And I also could like roll these over into the summertime, but they're books that I definitely see that are coming out within these next few months that I would love to pick up if I have the time. And if none of those have spoke to you, I have some recommendations of books that I have read that I feel like give spring vibes or would just be good to read during this time of year. First and foremost, Ready or Not by Cara Stone. I loved this book. I think I read it, was it last year? Did I read this last year? When I did read this, I had this immediate impression of just how funny our author is. And I feel like with specifically saying the author instead of the character is because you can tell that this is probably the author's sense of humor from page one, because this is an accidental pregnancy trope. So if you literally don't like that at all, this whole entire book it deals with that the whole entire time. That is the plot of the book. So if that is something that is just a turn off for you, definitely don't pick it up. However, if you're on the fence about it, I would still recommend it for you, because I feel like even though that is definitely what the book is about, it is such a gravitating love story, and our love interest is literally the human embodiment of a golden retriever. Just somebody that really knows and is there for somebody and cares for someone, especially in such a delicate positioning as this one. It takes place in New York City, and I feel like just the light, airy feeling of this book really helps accompany that light, airy feeling of spring. You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hochul. I am just screaming about this book like every time that I can fit it into a recommendations video, honestly, because I feel like this book is underrated, and I feel like I never see anybody talk about this book, and I read this book years ago. And a fun little backstory is back when I read this book, I got it from the library, and I literally loved it so much that I was like, I need to go buy the physical copy of this book. And back then I was not buying books. I just remember feeling so swoon worthy, and the banter and the dynamics of them, because there's like a whole lot of pranks. It's a second chance romance, because basically our couple is engaged, but they're kind of at a really rough spot within their relationship where it feels like both of them ultimately want to break it off, but like the other one doesn't want to be at fault because of the wedding that's already planned. So they're basically kind of like pranking each other back and forth to get the other person to call off the wedding. And there's so much more to the story. And also I feel like the feeling of like, you know, when you read romance books and obviously it's like two people falling in love for the first time, I also really enjoy a good romance book where it's two people falling back in love with each other and showing that even within the longevity of a relationship, like these two people are already well established, have been dating for a long time, they're literally engaged to be married, and they have hit a rough spot, but like how these efforts and communication can be made, and you can fall in love with somebody like all over again and realize like what you have right in front of you. I actually have a few Taylor Jenkins Reid recommendations. Two of them are off of her backlist. First one being One True Loves. I feel like this book had its time around booktube like 2 to 3 years ago, and this is a book that still sticks with me. Honestly, most of Taylor Jenkins Reid's backlist really sticks with me because I know a lot of people love her series. I think it's called the Hollywood series. We're talking Daisy Jones and the Six, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Malibu Rising, Carrie Soto Was Back. That's within that series, right? This is her backlist, and One True Loves is on this, and I just feel like on her backlist she does a really, really good job of like different stories, specifically with One True Love. We have her FMC, and she basically has her husband. She's very happy. One day he goes missing, presumed dead. Years later, she's engaged to someone else, and then all of a sudden she gets this call that her husband has been found, and it's been years later. So you're kind of following this storyline of like this rock and a hard place, right? And I really enjoy books like that with such a like interesting dynamic to think about. So One True Loves, that's one that has always stuck with me. There are so many quotes from that book that I think about all of the time. The second one from Taylor Jenkins Reid is Maybe in Another Life. Again, another very interesting plot that Taylor Jenkins Reid came up with. This one is where we have two different storylines. And basically our female main character goes out one night with her friends, and in one story she gets into an accident, and I'm pretty sure in the other one she does not, and she goes home with this guy that she had known from her past, I'm pretty sure. So then in the book it's kind of split between these two lines of like what her life would look like if this happened and if this happened. And it's a very interesting story. It's a very interesting dynamic. You find yourself rooting for different things, and it's such an interesting take on like, we've all had that moment of sitting and being like, well, if this happened instead of this, like I wonder what my life would look like. So it's kind of tackling that thought process, and I really, really like that. I just love when a book has a more interesting dynamic and is kind of like a think, you know, like it makes you think when you think. Obviously, I don't do that often from how I'm talking. But then the last one that I have is Carrie Soto is Back. Now this is from the Hollywood series, and while I really do enjoy the Hollywood series, it's honestly some of my favorite books that I've ever enjoyed have came out of that Hollywood series. It's just, I'm a sucker for like old Hollywood and like 70s, 80s, 90s. And so Carrie Soto is Back. This is about Carrie Soto. She is a tennis player. She is a very misunderstood person because her attitude is mainly what it is. She's a complex character because you are reading somebody who, like, I feel like if you read her from a different point of view, she would come off way different than being read inside of, you know, her own kind of monologue and knowing her and her stories and everything, and why her attitude is kind of the way that it is, and why she perceives herself to the public the way that she does. And, you know, where's this line between confidence and cockiness? You know, it's very interesting with her character. I'm not somebody who watches tennis, don't particularly find tennis very like interesting personally as a like viewer to watch. However, there are like parts of this book where we kind of read these tennis matches. Had me on the edge of my seat. This whole entire book had me on the edge of my seat. I remember crying and everything. I would recommend all of those books for the springtime. Next up, I have Alone with You in the Ether by Olive Blake. I read this book a few years ago, but it's a book that I think about every now and then. It's very interesting. And first of all, Olive Blake has such poetic, beautiful writing, and I feel like it really shines in this book because it's more of just like a fiction book. Mental health is definitely a very central thing around both of our main characters, things that they struggle with and kind of how this relationship comes together and how these things intertwine. It is a very, very interesting book on that and the dynamic of that relationship. Talked about her earlier, The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. I really, really love this book. One, I told you guys earlier, Catherine Center, her books are always a little bit more quirky, and characters and even just the plots and everything are a little bit more like quirky, lighthearted. And with this one, our female main character is the bodyguard for this like famous actor. So the dynamic too on that is switched, you know, flip-flopped, which I really enjoy. But also like she is this strong woman, so seeing her bring that to the table, but she's also dealing with some of like her own things and then coming to be on this mission with this guy, and like things just get silly, they're heartwarming, it's emotional, it's a really good time. Next up, I have The Godparent Trap. Again, I read this book a few years ago, but I always think about it because if you guys liked this movie, I somehow always forget the name of it, but it is literally the same plot. So if you liked this movie and you've watched it before, or vice versa, if you read this book, you would probably like this movie if you liked it. But basically we have our two main characters, our MMC and our FMC. They are guardians to these children because they're, I think our MMC, it's his sister, if I'm not mistaken, and if I'm remembering this correctly, his sister and her husband are killed in this car accident, and it is our FMC's best friend, and they're both left to take care of their children. So figuring out this dynamic of like both of them living together, and they don't really get along, they've never gotten along, and now having to come together and like put their schedules together and like behave as parents for these children and figure out that dynamic. But also like they have a history because they've known each other for years, but they've always butted heads and never like really got along. Just remember, this book is like an easy read. It's also emotional because of like what we're dealing with in the plot, and also dealing with children and like the weight of now being the sole guardians after something so tragic has happened to these kids, and then trying to figure out raising these kids but also raising them together was very interesting, and I really liked reading about it. Next up, I have Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is the first book in this little series that she has. Like, it's Part of Your World, Yours Truly, and Just for the Summer. They're all three in the same world, and this is the first book. So that's part of the reason why I'm recommending it, but also because this one takes place in this small town that our FMC is driving home. and she basically breaks down in this small town and meets our MMC, and they have like a one night stand, but then like she can't stop thinking about him type of thing. But she is recently going through this messy divorce with like this guy who's just simply put the worst, but she still has to work with him, and her family really likes him, and you know, those different dynamics that go into it. So that one's really nice, but I really feel like the small town vibe of that one specifically gave me a springtime vibe. Also, he literally has like a baby goat that he puts in pajamas. Okay, another fantasy series. This one's a trilogy, so you don't have too much of a commitment, because I know sometimes signing up for like a 4+ book series is a little bit like, it's a lot. And this one, you know, you don't really have to read any other books before. Some people will say, oh, I recommend reading Caraval before, but I feel like that's really only if they enjoyed Caraval. They're like, read Caraval. You don't need to. This is the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. And this one, because of how fairy tale-esque this series is why I recommend it for the springtime. It literally feels like opening up a storybook and just reading like this fantasy series about it. Also, all of the characters and the dynamics and just like the silliness. It's like silly and serious at the same time. Like all of the things that are happening, like I said, it's very reminiscent of like an Alice in Wonderland feel. If you know what I mean, like when you watch / read Alice in Wonderland and all of the like, you know, crazy things that are happening but are silly within its own self of these crazy things that are happening, definitely the vibe that this book gives. Okay, I recommend The Naturals strictly because sometimes I feel like, again, how I spoke about in the beginning, how weather can kind of predict and change different things about my feelings towards books. If you're feeling like reading and you want a very bingeable series, this is a 4-book series. There's also a novella at the end that you can read, but it's a novella. So I always say 4 books. And it's literally Criminal Minds, but children, they're like teenagers, they're like 16 years old. This book, honestly, like some of the things that are talked about in the different crimes and stuff that go down in this book, they're a lot more serious than you would go into expecting from a young adult book. So definitely don't let it being young adult like deter you from that. It's one of my favorite series that I've ever read, and it's above the Inheritance Games trilogy because it's the same author that writes Inheritance Games, and I really enjoy them. So I would recommend that for a nice like bingeable series for you to read. Next up, Out on a Limb. I love this book. I read this book a few years ago, and the guy is just such like, I would say he's a golden retriever type, but he's genuinely Beau. He is one of the most caring main characters that I've ever read in my life. This is also an accidental pregnancy trope, so if you don't like that, don't pick up this book. I feel like this book, even if you didn't like the accidental pregnancy trope, you would like it done how it is in this book, because one thing that I just remember really appreciating is also like postpartum depression representation and the conversation around it. And I feel like conversation around pregnancy from a woman's standpoint with a very attentive partner, and kind of what a healthy communication relationship looks like, not even just a relationship but a friendship, because a lot of this book is them as friends, and I really adored that in the book as well, of like their communication and the way they were just constantly setting healthy boundaries and showing that even within like a friendship / relationship, like a long-term relationship, it is healthy and appropriate to set boundaries with somebody, and that is how relationships work. I really enjoyed that. Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. This one's really fun because our 2 main characters, a lot of it has to do with like flowers. Flowers is a very big thing within the relationship because she is basically this wedding planner and they share a past together. And he is like this really big florist that like everybody wants to get for their wedding. Am I a little bit reaching for that? Because like, you know, springtime and flowers? Yes. But if you want a second chance romance where the guy like is silently yearning for the girl, you would like it. Next up, if you want a good audiobook, I would recommend Thank You for Listening by Julie Whelan. It's actually, it's kind of like I don't know, because Julie Whelan's actually a very popular audiobook narrator, like that is her job. And then she wrote this book where our female main character reads like for audiobooks, like she's an audiobook narrator as well. But she basically is kind of at this hard point in her life. She's had this accident that has left her reeling a little bit, and she meets this man one night, and basically then it kind of changes things for her, and then we kind of go into this different whirlwind romance. But I listened to the audiobook for this one because I was like, it's just kind of, it's a very, I don't know, moment to listen to the audiobook of it. and it was really good. I really liked it. I really enjoyed the narrators. And obviously Julia Whelan is like such a popular audiobook narrator that of course the audiobook was going to be good. So if you want a good audiobook, romance, thank you for listening. Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan. This book to me is the like embodiment of like the start of spring. I'm pretty sure we even talk about the start of spring and like hydrangeas and everything. Like that's a very specific part of this book. So that's why I'm recommending this one for the springtime. I love this book so much. I just raved about it in my favorites of 2024 video that I just got out. It's such a good book. I love the romance in it. It's such like a silly plot to think about, but it just works. It works. It feels real. The love is just swoon worthy, and just like I picture it in my head as like a rom-com movie, like the way that their dynamic is. Next up, A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. This one is like every book lover's dream. I love the plot of this book. So basically, our female main character gets sucked into the world of her favorite small town romance series, and she like goes to live in vacation in this small town and meets all of her favorite characters like in the flesh, and meets this guy and kind of has a romance with him. This book was just so interesting, and it gave such a springy vibe, but also as a book lover, I feel like it's a plot that speaks to book lovers' soul. So I would definitely recommend that one as well. Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. This one too, I would recommend as a really good audiobook. None other than Meryl Streep narrates this one, and it just really added to the whole entire experience for me. Gosh, I loved the audiobook of this one. Even just the book itself. One, if you look at the cover, you cannot tell me that this does not give springtime. But other than that, the story of this is like a mother telling her 3 daughters about kind of like stories from her youth of when she was this actress, and her time acting in a play with this now well-known man who was an actor, and kind of this story of the two of them in her life during that time. And it's a very interesting dynamic because it definitely has some then and now, where you see her just speaking, communicating with her daughters, and where she's at in life with her daughters, and she lives on this property that I feel like part of the reason that I'm recommending it for spring, a big part of it, is because of how even the property is described. I feel like it gives into that spring ambiance. Last book that I have is Fragile Sanctuary by Catherine Cowles. I actually haven't continued this series yet, but this book in this series presumably is a really good series to get lost in. Like if you need a very easy read that you can just like escape into. It's a small town romance series. Specifically with this one, there's hints of mystery throughout each of them. Like in this one, her parents passed away when she was a lot younger in this fire, and she does not know what happened because it was very mysterious circumstances. And then years later, she's finally ready to move back, and then kind of stuff starts happening around her house while she's trying to remodel it. And that's like the mystery element of it, but she also has this romance with one of the guys that are redoing her house. And it's like she has this like very big family that she was adopted into, so definitely the romances in the next books are surrounding them. There might be 1 to 2 books that have been released since this one, but I really do want to get more into this series because it's just one of those books that you can just easily escape into. Those are all of the books that I have to recommend you, and those are all the books on my TBR. Hopefully you guys found a few books to add to your TBR list, as if we need it, you know? I feel like as readers, we are constantly adding to the never-ending pile of books that we want to read, you know, and can we help it? No. What are we gonna do? You know, so many books, so little time, as probably a mug at Hobby Lobby says. So anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video, you guys know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff you guys know how to do. Let me know down below what's on your spring TBR and some books that you would recommend me for the springtime. I'm always open to some recommendations, as always, and you could be recommending to somebody else that's scrolling through the comments. If you guys are having a great day, I love you guys so much. I will see you guys when I see ya. Peace.